Hello everyone, welcome to this video. It is my January 2022 wrap-up video. I read 5 books this month and I have so much to share about each of them, so stay tuned. So January for me was kind of a month where I read a lot of backlist books. Like I said, I read 5 books. Towards the end of the month, I would say that I approached somewhat of a reading slump, which was expected. In December, I read a ton of books, and in November as well. And I got into the habit of reading 2 to 3 books per week, which is a lot for me. I'm typically someone who aims to read 1 book if I'm lucky per week. And so I usually end up reading about, 4 to 5 a month. That's how it was in 2021 at least. But at the end of 2021, as school started to slow down, as we got into the holiday break, as I got more time to read, I ended up reading a lot more than usual. And so in January at the start, I was reading a bunch of books. I think the first 3 books I'm going to mention were all read within the same week. But then definitely as the weeks went on, I started to slow down my reading by a lot, as school picked up again. And so I ultimately ended the month with 5 books. And these are all backlist books, like I said. And what that means is just that they are books that weren't released in 2022. So none of them are new releases. And they're books that I had on my TBR from previous years that I finally got to in the month of January of this year. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to be talking about is 10 Truths and a Dare by Ashley Elston, and you'll probably recognize the author of this one. She's actually the author of 10 Blind Dates, which came out, I want to say in the holiday time of 2020 or either 2020 or 2019. And I remember this book blew up on BookTube and on the blogosphere, and I kind of wish that this book had a similar cover in some sort of way so that people would know to link it to that book, because that was a really great and fun read. And this one is just the same. And I was so happy to find out while reading this book that it actually follows the same family that the first book followed. And for those of you that don't know, 10 Blind Dates was basically a book all about this girl who goes home for Christmas. She just got dumped by her boyfriend. And so her family decides to set her up over the break, but like on 10 blind dates. And so she goes on those dates and chaos ensues, and it's super fun and interesting. And the big family dynamic was really at the heart of the story. And the same goes for this one as well. But in this one, we're focusing on a different cousin, and that is Olivia. Olivia is super excited because it's senior week, the week after exams, but before graduation, and it's a week filled with parties and celebration, and she's excited to bask in it all before she looks forward to the future. She's class salutatorian. She's going to be going to LSU, or Louisiana State University, in the fall, and she's poised to sail through to the next phase of her life. But then all of this goes astray when she finds out that her off-campus PE form is unsigned, and it puts her in jeopardy of not graduating at all. And she basically has this 1 week, senior week, to set things straight without tipping off her very big family and also her parents, who are currently on a work trip. The only catch is that her parents are tracking her location via like this app, kind of like a Find My Phone type situation, but it's like family sharing. So you're sharing your location with your family. And so they're sending her constant messages and everything like that. And she can't let them know that she's going to be doing all of these activities to try to graduate and get things right. And so she enlists her 3 other cousins, 2 boys and 1 girl, to kind of help her navigate this. They pretend to be her and carry her phone around in the locations that she's supposed to be in, try to text her mom while she's away doing all of this so that, her mom doesn't suspect anything. And so it's crazy funny, and I found myself smiling throughout reading this book. And it was just such a great book to start the year off with. A very cutesy, lighthearted, fun contemporary read, and it gave me all the senior year vibes, which of course I love, and I think I'll forever love, given that I missed out on my own senior week in graduation. So yeah, 10 Truths and a Dare was a book I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I want to talk about is Roomies by Christina Lauren. I love this author writing duo, and their books are go-to comfort reads for me, which is exactly what I needed when I read this. This book is all about Holland Backer, who is a resident of New York City who loves visiting this one particular subway station because there is this guitarist there, and he's basically kind of like her street musician crush. And so His name is Calvin, and he is an amazing guitarist, like I said. The thing is that Holland's uncle is actually a really famous official or Broadway producer, and his play or his show is kind of in jeopardy right now. They really need a fresh new talent to come in. And so Holland invites Calvin to audition for her uncle's production, and her uncle loves him. He's exactly what they needed for the production, but the problem is that Calvin is here on an expired visa. And so Holland decides to marry Calvin so that he can be able to perform in her uncle's production and save the production. At the same time, though, she's grappling with her own feelings with him and trying to figure out what this means for her life. And so it's a marriage of convenience that is definitely not convenient at all, and sparks are flying between the two, and they're really trying to navigate this situation. I thought that this was a really great book. There was a little twist at the end that I did not enjoy, and I really feel like the book could have done without. But other than that, I would say it was a pretty solid comfort type read. I think I ultimately gave this book about 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is Meet Cute by Helena Hunting. I've tried like 3 times already to explain what this book is about, but I think there's so many different components to it that this is going to be difficult. This book is essentially, I think it's perfect for fans of the hating game. There is a enemies to lovers trope here. There's also an office comedy or office rom-com type situation happening, and it gives me many of the same vibes, even though I haven't read the book, The Hating Game, but I have seen the movie. I think that's enough to say, if you liked that, you'll like this. This book is all about Kaylin, who basically is reeling from the fact that Daxton Hughes just walked into her place of work where she works as a lawyer. And she and Daxton Hughes have a shared history. So she and Daxton went to law school together, and they were kind of rivals the entire time throughout. But even before that, Daxton used to be this actor on the show that she loved as like this teenage heartthrob character, and she was obsessed with him. So now, 8 years later, Dax is in her office and he's asking for legal advice. And despite her anger, Kaylin can't help feeling sorry for him because his parents died and he's become the sole guardian to his 13-year-old sister. And then her boss finds out that she is working with Daxton Hughes and he's a celebrity client. And there's even more at stake for Kaylin because if she gets Dax to work at the firm, then she'll be promoted to partner. So the more time that Kaylin spends with Dax and his sister, she starts to see the situation for more than just a work perspective and a rival's perspective, but rather as the perspective of a friend to Dax and kind of a more maternal figure to his sister. And the more that she realizes, and the more that she spends time with them, the more she realizes that the chemistry they had from the past is still as fresh as ever, and sparks are flying, things are crazy, so much happens from there on, and I'm sure that you can guess what that is. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I think that it definitely deals with heavier themes such as death of a parent, car crashes, adoption, and those are all things to keep in mind here. So it was a lot heavier or darker, I would say, than your typical rom-com, but it is cute and I definitely enjoyed it. The next book that I want to talk about is The 5 Wounds by Kirsten Valdez Quade. This one is a character-driven work of literary fiction that basically follows the Padilla family in the deprived town of Espanola in New Mexico at the start of Holy Week. Amadeo is an unemployed 32-year-old who finds purpose and a sense of rebirth in his newly appointed role of Jesus in the church's local passion play type thing. And he's self-centered and oblivious to the daily needs of his mom and daughter. Yolanda, his mom, has just received fatal and life-changing news. Her Angel, his 16-year-old daughter, is pregnant and has just fled her mother's home. She's grappling with her stepfather's abuse, the lack of dependable adults in her life, and also planning for her future. And over the course of this story, we're immersed into all of these perspectives and these characters' lives, not only with regards to their socioeconomic status. Like I said, Espanola is a town which is riddled with issues such as poverty, addiction, unemployment, high dropout rates, etc. But we also learn about these characters and their quips, their interests, their desires, their longings, and their heartaches. And I think Quade does a really great job of using this sort of Good Friday premise, which I initially thought that this whole book was going to be set over that week of Good Friday, but it isn't. We go from, Lent to Easter season to ordinary time, and then back into Lent again eventually. Advent and stuff happens as well, but we get back into Lent of the next year. And she does a really great job of using the Catholic tradition as a launch point to really explore more universal themes, such as our need for attention, what it means to fail, and how hard it can be to overcome our mistakes and our circumstances. There is so much to unpack here, and I definitely think that I would benefit from a second reading of this book. It's hard because there were also moments when I found that this book was quite slow paced and difficult to sort of get through. True to the genre, ultimately everything comes to a climax at the very end, and everything that we've been building up on, all of the different themes, images, symbols that were sprinkled in throughout the text finally come into fruition, I would say, at that climax, and finally snap into place, make sense at that point. And so it took a while to get there, but we do get there in the end. So nonetheless, the place that I was transported to while reading this book, I think totally makes the whole book worth it, because despite the slow pacing, I found myself constantly desiring to read more, and that's how you know that you read a good book. So yeah, ultimately I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, truly enjoyed it. Next thing that I want to talk about is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and I totally remember when Gone Girl exploded into existence in 2012, and then when the movie came out in 2014, it had yet another great moment. And I also remember that I was way too young to have read it then, and so here I am reading Gone Girl now in 2022, and I have to say I really enjoyed the first half of the book. There were moments where I feel like I saw tropes, where I saw plot twists coming, just because of the fact that Gone Girl, I think, is like the Hunger Games, in which so many other thrillers that have come after Gone Girl since have taken inspiration from it and have put these tropes into their own work, right? And so I think that's exactly what happened here, in that because I've read things that have come since, I feel like I knew, I saw those tropes coming, I saw those plot twists coming. And even despite the fact that I saw it all coming, I was still really interested in reading Gone Girl. I was really enjoying it, and I was having fun up until, I would say, the halfway point of the novel, and that's where my interest dimmed. And that is just because of a shift in the narration that occurred. From there on, I feel like the writing stopped feeling taut and started feeling more like, here's what I said in my Goodreads review. I said it started seeming more like a bad Heathers fan fiction featuring middle-aged people. And I know that that is incredibly harsh, but that is what I felt in the moment. And I don't feel like the last half was it. I found some of the ways in which women were described and treated and portrayed in the novel to be very off-putting. And I'm not mad. I mean, it's quite possible. I'm sure, in fact, that I missed something, that I didn't understand certain choices the author made in her writing to kind of maybe better develop the psyches of both the narrators. But all that is to say, like, I'm just confused. I'm mulling over and processing some of the things that occurred in the book and just questioning why. Why was it written that way? Why was it portrayed that way? And I'm just not a fan. I also feel like the ending was just a little too vague for my taste, and so yeah, I guess that's what I get for reading Gone Girl in 2022. I liked all of the plot stuff in the first half, and then the second half, just the narrative voice, the portrayal of women was just not my cup of tea. And so this book is not rated. I don't think I'm going to be rating it anytime soon. But I'm glad that I read it, and I got to experience something that I've been curious about for a long time. All right, so that was my January 2022 wrap up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm super excited for my next video. I'll see you soon. Bye.